They say the Emperor sits upon his golden throne, radiant and eternal. They say his divine light pierces the darkness of the void, guiding his children through the madness of the warp. They say his mind watches over every soul. His mercy shelters mankind from the hungry gods that dwell beyond the veil. They say many things, and almost all of them are lies. For 10,000 years, the Imperium has worshipped a corpse. It kneels before a god who no longer speaks, who no longer sees, who no longer is. They call it divinity, but it is merely persistence, a body that refuses to rot, a soul chained between life and death, an echo of will held together by the suffering of billions. And I have seen it. I have seen the throne. I have seen what lies beneath it. I am no saint, no custodian, no hero of terror. I was once a lowly scribe, a servant of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, one of thousands who recorded the transfer of psychers from the black ships to the great sanctum below the palace. My duty was not glorious. I counted bodies. I signed documents. I stamped approvals for souls to be consumed by the Emperor's light. I believed, as all good servants do, that my labor preserved humanity. Until one day, I was sent below. The golden throne rises above the surface of terror, like a mountain made of faith and guilt. Its towers reach into the storm clouds, crowned by spires of blackened gold. Pilgrims kneel in the ash at its base, blindfolded by choice, whispering prayers to a god they will never see. They think the light that burns from its crown is holy fire. But that light is not salvation. It is leakage. You can hear it in the wind, the faint hum of psychic energy seeping through the cracks of the ancient machinery. It does not sing, it moans. It sounds like breath, like something alive but broken. And the closer you come to the throne, the more that hum becomes a heartbeat. The tunnels beneath the palace are endless. Stone gives way to steel, and steel gives way to flesh. The deeper you descend, the warmer the air becomes, not from fire, but from life. There are chambers where the walls glisten, as if sweating, where the air itself vibrates with a pulse. They say it is the machine's resonance. I know better. For beneath the surface, beneath the gold and marble and prayer, there is something else. They call it the sacrifice engine. Every day, 1,000 psychers are brought before it, chosen from the billions harvested across the Imperium. They come from every world, every caste, every sin. Some arrive weeping, others chanting hymns, some still clinging to the hope that they will serve the Emperor in purity. And they are right in a way. They will serve him. They will feed him. The process is ritualized, mechanical, merciless. They are stripped, bound, and placed within the chambers that line the throne's foundation, metal coffins that hum with power. Each coffin is connected by thick conduits that snake upward toward the core of the machine. When the ritual begins, the air turns white. Screams echo through the halls, and psychic energy pours through the conduits like rivers of molten light. You can feel it even from the outer corridors, the raw, hungry pull of something ancient devouring the immaterial. They say it sustains the Astronomicon, the holy beacon that allows mankind to navigate the warp. They say it keeps the Emperor alive, but I have heard the screams, and I have felt the echo that follows them. I do not believe it sustains anything. I believe it feeds something. The first time I witnessed a feeding, I nearly went mad. The light was blinding, but within it, I saw shapes, faces, pressed against the inside of the conduits, as if trying to escape. Their mouths were open, but no sound emerged. Their eyes burned like dying stars. And when the light dimmed, I could still hear whispers, echoing down the corridors, repeating the same phrase again and again in a dozen languages. I see him. He is not asleep. I tried to forget those words. I tried to serve without question. But once you have heard the voices of the fed, silence becomes unbearable. The custodians walk those halls like statues of judgment. Their golden armor gleams even in the dim light, and their eyes glow with something more than human will. They do not speak to us. They do not need to. Their presence alone silences blasphemy. And yet, even they flinch when the throne groans. It does not happen often, perhaps once every few years, but when it does, the entire palace trembles. The machine screams like a dying god, and for a moment, the Astronomicon flickers. The sky darkens. The warp shifts. Navigators lose their bearings, and in that instant of silence, every living thing in the palace hears it. A sound like breathing, a sound like laughter, a sound from beneath the throne. After such events, the feedings increase. 10,000 psychers may be brought in within a single week, their life forces drained until only dust remains. The Adeptus Mechanicus calls it calibration. The Ecclesiarchy calls it atonement. The custodians call it nothing at all. But I know what it means. The throne is not a machine of preservation. It is a cage, and cages are not made to sustain the prisoner. They are made to contain it. I have seen the throne's core just once. It was not meant for my eyes, but error and fate are siblings. There is a chamber below the primary sanctum where the conduits converge. The walls there are made of something that looks like gold, but it moves like muscle. It pulsates, rippling with light from within. And in the center, suspended by hundreds of cables, dripping with ichor, lies a figure, the Emperor of mankind, or what remains of him. He does not resemble a man. He is vast, his flesh fused with the machine, his limbs long since dissolved into the throne's architecture. His skull burns with a halo of fire that flickers between brilliance and shadow. Around him, the air is heavy, thick with psychic pressure, so dense it feels like water. Even with my eyes closed, I could see visions burned into my mind, fragments of memory not my own, worlds burning, voices screaming, and beneath it all, a single whisper that came not from him, but from something else. He is not the only one awake. I do not know what that means, but I know what I saw. And I know the truth that all the Imperium denies. The Emperor is not sleeping. He is not healing. He is not waiting to rise again. He is changing. Every soul fed into the throne becomes part of him. Every thought, every emotion, every scream merges into that vast psychic furnace. And after 10,000 years, he is no longer the being he once was. Perhaps he is no longer human. Perhaps he is no longer the Emperor at all. When I returned from that chamber, my hair had turned white. I tried to speak of what I saw, but the words failed me. I was taken by the custodians for cleansing. They did not kill me, though perhaps that would have been mercy. Instead, they erased my mind, layer by layer, until only fragments remained. But you cannot erase sound. You cannot silence truth once it has taken root. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear it, the hum of the machine, the distant choir of the sacrificed, the beating heart beneath the golden throne. It grows louder each year. Some nights I wake to find blood running from my ears, my skull vibrating with that same rhythm. It is not music. It is not prayer. It is a countdown. The priests say the Emperor endures forever. But nothing lasts forever, not even gods made of gold. One day, the throne will fail. The Astronomicon will flicker and die. And the thing that lies beneath the palace will awaken not as a savior, but as something the galaxy has never known. And on that day, the light of mankind will not go out. It will scream. The Emperor protects, they say. But from what and for how long? The Imperium calls him the Eternal Emperor, the undying God of mankind, seated upon his golden throne, guiding the souls of the faithful through endless night. But there was a time before the throne, before the divinity, before the silence, a time when he still walked among men. They say his body was flawless, tall, radiant, a vessel of pure will forged from the souls of ancient shamans. He led armies across the stars, crushed Xenos empires, and bound a fractured humanity beneath a single banner. They called it the Great Crusade, the march of reason, unity, and light. Yet even then, he was building his tomb. For while the Imperium conquered the stars, the Emperor's greatest work took shape in secret beneath the crust of terror, a machine vast beyond imagination, a doorway to eternity. It was called the Imperial Webway Project, an attempt to build a labyrinth of light, a network of safe passages through the warp to end the tyranny of daemons and sorcery forever. The Emperor sought to cage the gods themselves. He believed mankind could walk the stars unafraid, uncorrupted, guided not by superstition, but by science and will. He built the Golden Throne as the key to that future. It was not meant to be a seat. It was meant to be a gate. But the warp is patient. And faith, whether pure or perverse, is never truly silent. When the Primarchs were scattered by chaos, the Emperor's dream began to fracture. And when Horus, his favored son, turned against him, the webway collapsed. The daemons broke through the rift beneath terror. The palace burned, and humanity's god bled. It is said the battle between father and son shook the heavens. Horus, armored in the favor of the dark gods, stood at the pinnacle of his flagship, the vengeful spirit. The Emperor faced him, alone, surrounded by corpses, his golden armor shattered, his lightning claws dripping with ichor not of this world. They say Horus wept even as he struck his father down. They say the Emperor's light dimmed, but none truly know what happened within that cursed ship. All that is certain is this: when the battle was over, Horus was gone, erased from existence, and the Emperor was dying. The custodians brought him back to Terra in silence. They carried his broken body through halls still burning, through the ashes of billions, to the heart of the palace, to the machine he had built to conquer the warp. The Webway project was over. The gate would never open again, but it could still hold. They placed him upon the throne, and for 10,000 years he has not moved. The Mechanicus calls the machine the Golden Throne Mechanicum. To them, it is a marvel of divine engineering, half living, half metal, powered by ancient psychic circuits no mortal mind can comprehend. They say it connects directly to the fabric of the warp, regulating the Astronomicon, the Emperor's beacon of light. But the oldest among them, the ones who have walked its sublevels and seen its pulse, whisper another name: the Null Engine, a device built not to project light but to contain it, not to preserve life but to imprison a god. Every wire, every conduit, every rune-etched plate of the machine hums with invisible energy. The Mechanicus claims it draws power from the souls of the sacrificed, channeling them into the Emperor's body. But if you listen closely, if you stand near the heart of the machine and silence your mind, you can feel something deeper. The flow does not move into him. It moves outward. The Emperor does not consume the psychers. He repels them. Each sacrifice is a barrier, a layer of screaming consciousness burned to ash to keep the warp at bay. The souls are not nourishment, they are chains, and the chains must never break. The Adeptus Mechanicus fears this truth more than any heresy. Their litanies speak of maintenance, of energy balance, of divine regulation. But the oldest magi know what they truly maintain. They do not sustain the Emperor. They sustain the prison. Every few centuries, a ripple passes through the throne. The air above it shimmers, and the machine's song deepens by one note. The Mechanicus call these adjustments. But to those who have felt it, it feels like breathing. The throne breathes, the throne dreams, and something within it stirs. I have read the Forbidden Archives, the Chronicles of Dawn, the Scriptures of the Second Vault, the Testament of Malcador. They tell fragments of what truly happened in the hours after Horus's death. How the Sigillite, the Emperor's closest ally, ordered the Primarch Dawn to seal the Webway portal forever. How the custodians fought demons within the palace halls for 77 days. And how the dying Emperor, half consumed by the warp, whispered one final command: "Do not let me fall asleep." Those were his last words as a man. After that, he spoke no more. The Sigillite took that order literally. To prevent the Emperor from slipping into the warp, the Mechanicus modified the throne's function. They inverted its psychic polarity, creating an infinite feedback loop between his decaying body and the warp's tides. Every day, it drains the energy of 1,000 psychers to stabilize the storm within him. Every day, it holds him between life and death. Every day, it burns a little more of his soul. He has not fallen asleep, but he is no longer awake. There are whispers among the Inquisition that this limbo state has changed him, that after 10,000 years of feeding on billions of minds, the Emperor's consciousness has merged with the warp itself. He no longer sees as we do. He feels. Every prayer, every thought, every scream offered in his name feeds into his vast psychic awareness. He hears them all. He drowns in them, and through them, something else hears as well. The Ecclesiarchy calls it divine communion. The Ordo Malleus calls it psychic contamination. But the truth is simpler and far more terrible. The barrier between God and worshipper has dissolved. Humanity's faith sustains him, yes, but it also sustains whatever he is becoming. I once asked a custodian how he endures its standing watch over a god who may no longer be a god. He did not answer. He only looked at me. And in that silence, I felt it again, that hum, that vibration beneath the palace. It is always there, beneath your feet, a constant, rhythmic pulse. It feels almost like music. Some of the younger custodians call it the heartbeat of the throne, but others, the older ones, those who served since the heresy, refuse to speak of it. They say it is not the Emperor's heartbeat. It is the echo of something that moves beneath him, something ancient, vast, and patient. Something that has been listening for 10,000 years. The throne was never meant to be eternal. Even the Mechanicus admits that its systems degrade, its circuits decay. Its psychic wards flicker, the sacrifices grow larger, the drain deeper. Each year, the machine demands more. 1,000 souls a day may not be enough forever. And when the numbers fail, when the psychers run out, when the ships go silent, when the sacrifices cease, the machine will not stop. It will feed on anything, anyone, everything. And on that day, when the Emperor's body finally breaks, the light of the Astronomicon will not fade gently into darkness. It will burst like a dying sun, flooding the warp with 10,000 years of stored torment. The gods will scream, reality will buckle, and the thing that lies behind the golden throne will step forward to take his place. The Emperor protects, they still say, but perhaps it is not he who protects us, but we who protect it. They told us it was mercy. They told us it was holy. They told us the Emperor's light must be fed, or the galaxy would drown in darkness. They never told us what it meant to feed the light. Across the stars, they come the black ships, silent and immense, gliding through the void like funeral barges. Their prows bear no insignia, no windows, no mercy. Only the sigil of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, a single burning eye wreathed in chains. To the common citizen, the sight of a black ship brings relief. It means the psychers, the witches, the mutants, the tainted minds will be taken away, purged for the good of mankind. The ignorant cheer, the wise weep, for those ships are not prisons. They are harvesters, and their cargo is not human. It is fuel. I once served aboard one. A decade ago, I was a telepathica scribe, assigned to the ship Harrow of Dawn. We were bound for Terra, our holds packed with nearly 10,000 psychers, men, women, children, soldiers, saints, monsters. Every one of them doomed. From the moment they were loaded aboard, the ship began to scream. You cannot hear it with your ears. It is a psychic hum, a vibration at the edge of thought. At first, it feels like pressure behind the eyes, a headache that never ends. Then it becomes whispers, thousands of voices whispering the same word, over and over. Light. They dream of it, long before they see it. The light that burns but saves. The light that devours but delivers. The light of terror. The voyage from the outer rim to the solar system can take years. Few survive it. The weaker psychers die in their sleep, their minds consumed by nightmares leaking through the hull. Those who live begin to change. Their eyes glaze white. Their mouths move without sound. Sometimes they speak in unison, entire decks chanting words from languages older than the Imperium itself. The sanctioned psychers who serve aboard try to contain it. They chant counter-litanies, burning incense, scouring the air with holy oils. It never works for long. The deeper the ship travels through the warp, the more the cargo stirs. By the time we reached the solar gate, half were dead, a quarter had gone mad, and the rest was silent, utterly silent, their minds already gone ahead of them, pulled toward the throne like moths to a sun that never sets. When a black ship lands upon Terra, there is no welcome. There are no banners, no parades, no hymns, only silence. The ship docks beneath the palace, where the air smells of iron and incense, and the sky is black with ash. The psychers are marched out in chains, each flanked by armed wardens of the Scholastica Psychana. Their eyes are hollow, they do not cry, they do not speak. They have seen the light in their dreams, and it waits for them. Each procession ends at a vast gate carved with the sigil of the Imperial Sunday. The doors open not into heaven, but into the feeding halls. The feeding halls are nothing like the cathedrals above. There is no gold, no glass, no marble, only pipes. Miles and miles of pipes thick, pulsating conduits that snake through the darkness, carrying liquid that glows faintly violet. The air is thick with ozone and the scent of burnt copper. Every few seconds, a pulse runs through the walls, like a heartbeat. It is the rhythm of the machine. The psychers are led in groups of 100. Each is placed upon an altar, a slab of black metal lined with runes that pulse in time with their heartbeats. They are strapped down, wrists and ankles bound by cables. A priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus intones the litany of conversion. A custodian watches from the shadows. And then the machine begins to feed. The air hums. Light floods the chamber, and the screaming starts. It is not a human sound. It is the sound of the soul, leaving the body a vibration that burns itself into your bones. The walls glow. The conduits shudder. The entire hall trembles, as thousands of voices cry out and are silenced in the same instant. When it ends, the bodies are not corpses. They are husks hollowed, their eyes blackened, their veins filled with gold dust. The priests gather the remains and feed them into the furnace pits. Nothing is wasted, not even ash. They call this process the offering. Each day, 1,000 such offerings are made, some say more. Each one fuels the Astronomicon, the Emperor's psychic beacon that lights the warp. Without it, humanity would be lost among the storms. Every ship, every fleet, every colony, all would drift blind and die. And so the cycle continues. The harvest never ends. 1,000 souls every day, 10,000 every 10 days, 1 billion souls every few decades. Burned, consumed, forgotten. The numbers are carved into the records of the Telepathica, but they are never spoken aloud. They are a secret kept by every scribe, every priest, every soldier who serves the throne. We are all complicit in the lie. Sometimes, when the machinery falters, when a circuit burns out or a conduit ruptures, the priests say the offering was unworthy. The victims are discarded, and another 100 brought in. But I once saw a rupture that did not come from failure. It came from something inside the system. The light grew too bright. The conduits thrashed like serpents. The psychers on the altars convulsed, their chains snapping. Their screams merged into one single, deafening voice. It spoke no language known to man. It was older, vaster, and beneath it, I could hear laughter. When the light died, every priest in the chamber was blind. The custodian ordered them executed for heresy. But I remember the sound. It was not the Emperor's laughter. The priests say the Emperor accepts these offerings with infinite gratitude, that every soul burned upon his altar ascends to his light, that their sacrifice keeps him alive. But when I stood close enough to feel the heat of the conduits, I felt no divinity, only hunger. It was a hunger that pulled at the edges of the mind, a gravity that devoured thought itself. If you stand there too long, you begin to forget your own name. You feel your consciousness slip towards something vast, like being drawn into a whirlpool of gold and shadow. I felt it once for just a moment, and in that moment, I understood. The Emperor does not eat their souls. He absorbs their pain. He drinks their terror, their agony, their madness. It is not the light of the Astronomicon that guides the ships through the warp. It is the echo of that pain, a psychic scream stretched across the void. It burns so brightly that even the warp recoils from it. And that is what keeps mankind safe. Not love, not mercy, pain. Endless, unending pain. When I was reassigned from the feeding halls, I was told to forget what I had seen. They said my mind was contaminated by proximity. They sent me to the upper archives to transcribe purification hymns. But at night, I still hear them, the voices of the fed. They whisper through the static of the palace's comm channels, through the air vents, through the hum of the machinery. They are not angry. They are not mournful. They are pleading. We keep him alive, they say. But who keeps us? Each year, new black ships arrive. Each year, the harvest grows. The priests chant louder. The conduits pulse faster. The light of the Astronomicon burns brighter and darker. There are rumors now among the navigators that the beacon flickers in shades it never had before. Sometimes, they say, it feels alive, like a heartbeat echoing through the warp, like something beneath the Emperor is waking up. But no one dares to speak of that, because even the thought of it is heresy. And in the Imperium of man, heresy is a mercy compared to the truth. The Emperor protects, they say, but the Emperor does not protect. The Emperor endures, and we, the faithful, the damned, the blind, are the price of his endurance. They teach us that the Astronomicon is the Emperor's gaze made radiant, his everlasting lighthouse, piercing the insanity of the Immaterium and showing humanity the narrow path between teeth and storm. But a lighthouse is not the Sunday. It is a wound in the night that never closes. Sailors love it because they fear what the dark contains. And so the Imperium loves the Astronomicon because it fears to ask what it truly is. I have spoken with navigators who swear the beacon sings. Others insist it roars. A few say it breathes. The Navis Nobilite calls such talk poetic excess, the inevitable superstition of those whose third eye opens too often. Yet every navigator keeps a private book of visions, drawings in salt and ink, crooked staffs of light etched upon vellum, faces that are not faces peering from a halo of gold. They say it helps them sleep. They lie. It helps them not forget. On my last night within the palace, I was granted audience illicitly by a navigator whose family had guided black ships since before the heresy. She was ancient, draped in starcloth, the skin around her warp eye stitched with sigils that should have closed long ago but never did. She asked me if I believed the beacon to be the Emperor's will. I made the sign of the Aquila and answered as a loyal man must. She smiled without humor and opened her third eye. The chamber went away. There was no floor, no ceiling, no breath, only pressure, like being lowered beneath black oceans, stacked on black oceans, until sight remembered it was only a habit. Then there it was, not light at first. A pulse, a single cadence repeating, older than language, a measure laid upon madness that told the warp. Here is a boundary, here is a path, here is a pain, so bright you will turn your face aside. The pressure climbed, my teeth rang, I tasted iron. The pulse became radiance, and the radiance became a column, stretching to no place, and every place at once. It was not gold. It had colors I have no words for, and among them, threads of red like veins in stone. I heard voices, thousands braided into one, some praying, some pleading, some laughing with a laughter that had run out of body. The prayer was not invitation, it was refusal. A refusal so absolute that even demons, for a heartbeat, remembered they were only hunger. In that refusal, there was a pattern, and in that pattern, something looked back. I do not know how long I knelt. The navigator sealed her eye. The world returned. She poured bitter tea that smelled like burned copper and asked me what I had seen. I told her the catechism. She did not answer. She simply pressed a small codex into my hand pages of hand-scrawled star maps and a single sentence written again and again between them. A light that feeds is not a star. The Astronomicon is called a beacon, but beacons need fuel. The palace provides it, 1,000 souls a day, ground into a psalm, so loud the warp tries to forget it. The ecclesiarchy insists that suffering purified becomes grace. Hear me, suffering amplified becomes gravity. Ships fall toward it, some dragged, some guided. Navigators surf its harmonics like birds along a storm front, their third eyes half open, their minds lashed to the pattern so they do not hear the meaning underneath. I have seen the instruments the Mechanicus uses to chart the beacon's contour, great harp wheels of adamant and bone that register amplitude in prayer beats, oscillating sensor racks that smoke in exact sync with the throne's breathing. The graphs they draw are not lines, they are teeth. Every spike marks an offering. Every valley marks silence. There are fewer valleys each year. Astropaths whisper of changes no priest will record. They say the timbre has thickened. The harmonics carry a second voice. In choir halls across the segmentum solar, the blind sing the signal and go hoarse on a note that refuses to leave their throats. Some wake with dried blood in their ears and new scars in the shape of letters they cannot read. A few go quiet forever alive, seated, smiling because something in the light is still listening to their smile. I sought testimonies wherever rumor said a man might not come back with the same number of shadows. In the naval hospice at Ferris Jetty, I found a master navigator whose ship had strayed too deep into the beacon's path. He could no longer open his warp eye, the sutures fused shut with gold scab. He spoke to me through a cloth soaked in sanctified oil. You chart a wind, he rasped, and then the wind decides you are a chart. That's what it felt like. We were not guided, we were arranged. I set course by the strongest line, and the line moved to meet us. I asked what met them when it arrived. He laughed, a brittle sound that made the lamps shake. A choir, scribe. You never forget a choir. And one voice above them all, not loud, not kind, not cruel. Exact. Like a knife that fits the sheath of your thoughts better than they do. He died the next night. The attendant swore his last breath smelled of frankincense and hot metal. What then is the Astronomicon? If you asked me before I went below, I would have told you. It is the Emperor's mercy. If you ask me now, I will tell you another mercy. The kind soldiers show a wounded friend when the Medicae is far and the night is cold. It is mercy as a blade. Mercy as a tourniquet tightened until the limb forgets it was part of a body. It is a no shouted forever. But there is another possibility, one the Mechanicus hints at in footnotes, and the Ordo locks behind oaths. Perhaps it is no longer only a no. Perhaps, after 10,000 years, the throne's denial has learned to specify. You and I deny with words. Gods deny with shapes. A denial can be so precise it becomes design. Consider. More ships now report corridors. Within the warp narrow seams of calm threaded through tempest, too straight to be accident, too cruel to be kindness. Within those seams, time behaves. Outside them, it hunts. Navigators swear the seams hum in the same key as the beacon. Where do the seams lead? To mustering worlds, to shrine fleets, to wars, to terror. Perhaps the Astronomicon is not merely a light by which to travel. Perhaps it is a path that travels you. The ecclesiarchy would call that providence. The Inquisition calls it logistics. The demons have another word, bait, because every seam leaves wakes, and in those wakes drift things that remember the Great Crusade and hate the idea of straight lines. They gather along the margins like wolves along a road, eyes down, tongues out, learning the rhythm of boots. I have read the sealed reports from flotillas that tried to leave those seams mid-passage. I will not repeat them. Only this. Stepping off the road does not mean the woods forget the road was ever there. The woods remember, and they follow your voice home. There are ceremonies on shrine worlds where the faithful face the east and raise their hands toward terror. They think they are greeting the dawn. In truth, they are cupping their ears. The Astronomicon arrives as pressure first on the tongue, on the teeth, on the roots of thought, and then it resolves as certainty. We are seen. The certainty is warm. It becomes obedience. Obedience becomes quiet. Quiet becomes policy. Policy becomes graves you can see from orbit. To question the light is to question the only proof we have that the Emperor still reaches for us. That is why they drowned the navigatrix, who painted the beacon as a mouth. That is why they burned the astropathic hymn that dared sing a second name in the chord. That is why a scribe like me learns to let ink dry where it falls, and not ask why it always dries in ring. But the truth does not require your belief. It only requires time. And the truth is this. Some who look into the beacon do not see him. They see a silhouette behind him. I have spoken that blasphemy aloud now, and in doing so have tossed my life onto a scale and watched the weights do their work. Hear the rest, so that the price is not wasted. The old custodians say the silhouette is the shape of our collective fear, a mass hallucination woven from 1,000,000,000,000 pleadings into a false saint. The young custodians say nothing at all. The Mechanicus writes equations that stop a line before the sum. The ecclesiarchy sings louder, astropaths, though those burned clean toe the line between song and scream. The bravest call, the silhouette, the refraction. A refraction is not an invention. It is the truth bent as it passes through matter. If the Emperor is light, then 10 millennia of pain is matter enough to bend a god. What bends may break. On the day the Astronomicon faltered during the 13th Black Crusade, every choir in the segmentum solar convulsed. I stood in the sub-choir pits and watched mouths open in unison, like flowers in a furnace. For 13 seconds the beacon guttered not out, never that but other. The pressure did not stop. It reversed, as if the sea inhaled. I fell to my knees. Somewhere beneath the palace, machinery screamed with a pitch that peeled rust from iron. In that moment, I understood why the custodians never sleep. The light steadied. The litanies resumed. The reports filed themselves in language that meant less the longer you read it. The priests called it a deviation in the Emperor's radiance. The Mechanicus called it harmonic inversion, consistent with corrective recalibration. The Navis called it bad weather. The Inquisition called it contained. The psychers in the feeding halls called it by no name at all. Most were ash before their tongues could shape the thought. But the echo stayed with me. It has stayed with me through nights that have no windows and days that pretend to be gentler. When I close my eyes, I feel the beacon's cadence beating in the pulp behind them. Not a Sunday, not a wound, a metronome, counting down. To what? To failure? To apotheosis? To the day a light that has learned to feed decides that starving is another kind of song? I cannot say. I am only a man, and men use words to wall off what would drown them. The throne has no such need. It drinks words and leaves rhythm. In rhythm, even gods can be remade. And if the Astronomicon is now a bridge between what he was and what he is becoming, then every ship that sails by its grace is a footfall on the planks. We are walking him toward us. We cheer because the road is straight, and curse because the sides are full of teeth. We do not ask where the bridge ends. I asked, once. The navigator who loaned me her sight answered with a question of her own. If the light is a shadow cast on the warp by something seated upon the throne, she whispered. What casts the shadow behind the light? I had no answer. I still do not. But I carry the small codex she gave me, and the sentence written between maps. A light that feeds is not a star. I add, in my own shaking hand, a shadow that guides is not a friend. If we are fortunate, the Astronomicon remains exactly what the catechisms claim. His will, steadfast, sanctified by our suffering. If we are honest, it may be both will and wound, mercy and machine, a denial that became a design. And if we are damned as all men in this age are, we may yet live to hear what the beacon says when it no longer needs our ears. Until then, ships launch, choirs sing, the throne breathes, and somewhere beneath all that brightness, something practices a new note. There are places beneath the imperial palace that have no name, no map, and no prayer strong enough to reach them. The administratum calls them service vaults. The mechanicus calls them maintenance strata. The custodians call them nothing at all. To walk, there is to be a raised body first, then mind, then name. I walked there once, and I have never truly walked anywhere else since. They took me below under the pretense of clerical inspection, a reassignment ordered by the Adeptus Telepathica, a transfer so routine no one looked twice. In truth, it was penance. I had asked the wrong question too many times. Where do the souls go after the light takes them? For that, I was given a torch, a data slate, and a descent authorization stamped with the sigil of the Golden Throne itself. They told me to record maintenance data from the lower conduits. They told me not to look too closely. They told me not to pray aloud. The elevator sank for 7 hours. The air changed before the light did. Up above, the palace smells of incense and oil, the perfume of ritual. Down below, it smells like birth and rot, like metal bleeding and stones sweating. When the elevator doors opened, the torchlight revealed a corridor that looked less built than grown. Cable dangled like vein. Pipes pulsed faintly, carrying liquid that glowed with sickly violet. Everywhere I looked, the walls were engraved with the sigils of the Mechanicus, but over them, scrawled in red, were words in high Gothic. I could barely read them through the grime, but one phrase repeated again and again. He breathes beneath us. I found the first custodian, after 6 hours of wandering through corridors that curved like intestines. He stood motionless beside a sealed gate, his armor dim under the torchlight. The gold was darker down here, tarnished, streaked with something that might have been rust or blood. He did not move when I approached. He did not breathe. Only when I tried to speak did he raise one finger to his lips, a gesture that needed no translation. Then he pointed to the floor. The stone beneath us trembled. It was faint at first, like the distant roll of thunder beneath your feet. Then it came again, stronger, a deep, rhythmic pulse that moved through the ground and into my bones. It was not machinery. It was organic. It was breathing. The custodian's head tilted slightly, as if listening to something far away. Then, without a word, he stepped aside, letting me pass through the gate. Beyond it lay the tomb of layers. It was not a tomb of the dead, but of the half-living, the remnants of psychers who had not burned cleanly enough to be consumed. The priests call them echoes. The custodians call them sediments. They line the walls in glass sarcophagi stacked like hive apartments, thousands upon thousands of them. Inside each one, a body floats in golden fluid, tubes driven through eyes and mouth and spine. Some still twitch, some whisper. Their faces are the same, mouth open in silent scream, skin stretched thin over skulls that glow faintly from within. As I passed, the air vibrated. The whispers rose in unison, forming a single, impossible chord. The glass fogged with the heat of their breath. My torch flickered and died. And then, in the dark, they spoke. He remembers what we were. I ran. Not from fear, though. I would have welcomed that. I ran because I felt recognition. Something in that voice had my cadence, my rhythm, my breath. It was as if the throne had already started to remember me. The corridors narrowed. The stone became metal. The metal became flesh, and the flesh began to move. At first it was small, the twitch of a wall panel, the slow exhale of a vent. Then came sound, a deep, wet sigh that echoed through the ducts, followed by a metallic groan. I turned a corner and froze. The floor was alive, not crawling, rising. The plates shifted under my feet as if inhaling. The seams between them oozed with golden ichor that steamed when it touched the air. From the walls grew protrusions, metallic ribs fused with bone, conduits threaded through marrow. I pressed my hand against one, and it was warm. It pulsed in time with the rhythm beneath my feet. I realized then what the priests mean when they say the emperor's body is the throne. It is not a metaphor, it is anatomy. The path ended in a chamber so vast that my torch could not find its ceiling. The air was heavy, like water thick with electricity. Before me stood the central spine, a pillar of cables, bone, and metal descending from the upper sanctum into the earth below. It throbbed with light, each pulse casting shadows that seemed to move even when the light didn't. I could see faces in those shadows, faces pressed against the inside of the walls, mouths moving in rhythm with the pulse. The spine led down into darkness, and the darkness answered. A sound rose from below, deeper than thunder, older than language. It was not a voice but a thought spoken in the flesh of the world. It said no words, yet meaning flooded my mind, a feeling like being seen by something that had forgotten what seeing meant. You have come to write. My torch cracked. The flame went blue. Then write what cannot be read. The floor split open like a wound. Light spilled from it, red, gold, violet, all colors at once. None of them right. The air shook, and from within the wound rose a shape that I can only call mechanical life. Not a machine, not a daemon, not a man, but something between. Something that made all those words collapse into ash. It was built of engines and bones, its surface crawling with inscriptions that glowed, as if alive. Every sigil was a scream, frozen, mid-cry. Its hands were cruciform. Its face, Emperor preserve me, was a mirror. I saw myself, but older, hollowed, eyes glowing gold, mouth moving in time with the pulse of the throne. You see, you understand. We are the bones beneath his bones. The throne grows. The throne remembers. He was a man. Now he is a place. The thing reached out. I felt its touch without it touching, a current crawling beneath my skin, rewriting the edges of thought. For a moment, I felt the hum of the entire palace in my veins. I heard the custodians above, their hearts beating in unison with the machine. I heard the screaming of the psychers, their souls strung like harp strings. And beneath it all, I heard the Emperor's voice. Not words, not commands, just breathing, slow, endless, tired. When I awoke, I was back in the elevator. My torch was gone, my slate was blank, but under my fingernails, dried and dark, was something that was not ink. When I tried to clean it, it bled. They told me I had been found wandering one of the lower corridors, babbling in binaric tongues no lex mechanic could translate. They said the inspection logs were corrupted, my slate erased by warp interference. They reassigned me to the surface again. They said I was lucky, but I was not lucky. I was chosen, because now, wherever I go in the palace, I still feel it beneath the marble, beneath the gold, beneath my feet breathing. Sometimes, when the night is quiet and the choirs sleep, I hear the pulse through the walls. It is slower now, heavier, and when it stops for just a heartbeat, the silence is worse than any scream. He breathes beneath us. The writing on the walls had said, now I know what it meant. He breathes, yes, but one day he will stop. And when he stops, the galaxy will not fall silent. It will exhale. The Emperor protects, they whisper. But even protection decays. And what is left when a god exhales? The custodians are more than warriors. They are monuments made of obedience. 10,000 golden statues that never sleep, never age, never question. But statues do not bleed. And the custodians bleed, though only where the light cannot see. There is a legend among the common faithful, told in whispers outside the cathedrals of terror. It says that once every century, a custodian weeps. No one ever sees it happen, but they say that when it does, the ground beneath the imperial palace trembles, as if the throne itself feels their sorrow. That legend is wrong. They do not weep once every century. They weep every day. They just do not have eyes to show it. The custodian's armor is not gold by choice. It is gold by burden. Each suit contains more than flesh. It contains memory. Every strike they parry, every scream they silence, every order they obey is recorded in the psychoplastic filigree that binds the armor to their skin. 10,000 years of vigilance, 10,000 years of silence, and the weight of every soul burned to keep their master alive. They are not soldiers anymore. They are keepers. And what they keep is not the Emperor. It is the balance between his divinity and his decay. I learnt this truth in the chamber called the Vault of Echoes, buried beneath the western transept of the throne. Only the custodians walk there. I was allowed to enter once, not by command, but by accident, or perhaps by the kind of permission that feels like punishment. The vault was vast, lit by columns of blue fire that cast no shadow. Around them stood the custodians motionless, heads bowed, hands crossed over chests. In front of each stood a basin filled with shimmering fluid. Within the fluid floated fragments of gold, not coin, not ornament, but shards of armor. They were whispering. The sound was faint, like breath drawn through glass, a language without words, half prayer, half lament. I realized that each shard was alive. Each fragment contained the echo of a fallen brother, their voices stored within the material, looping endlessly, recounting the same duty. Guard him, guard it, guard the gate. I wanted to ask which gate they meant, but before I could, one of them turned. He was taller than I expected, his armor cracked and darkened with age. His helmet bore no crest, no plume, no sigil, only a single line of script, etched by hand. Fide silentium, faith in silence. He regarded me for a moment that felt like judgment. Then, in a voice like grinding stone, he spoke. You should not be here. I fell to my knees, stammering apologies. He lifted one gauntleted hand and motioned for silence. The motion alone stopped my heart for a breath. Then he said something that I still cannot fully accept. You have seen the breathing. You have heard the hum. Now you must understand why we cannot let it stop. He led me deeper into the vault. We descended through stairways carved from metal and bone, lit by flickering lumen pools. The air grew warmer, denser thick with incense and the smell of ozone. At the bottom stood a door of black adamant, covered in seals that pulsed faintly with red light. Around it stood 6 custodians, their blades planted into the floor, their eyes closed. They did not move, not even to breathe. This is the oath chamber, he said. We come here when the throne falters. He placed his hand upon the door, and the seals dissolved into smoke. Beyond lay a hall lined with reliquaries, each one filled with relics of unimaginable sanctity, fragments of circuitry, vials of golden ichor, shards of bone wrapped in copper wire. At the far end stood an altar. Upon it lay what I thought at first was a statue. Then it opened its eyes. It was a custodian, or what was left of one. His armor had fused with his flesh, his limbs merging into cables that snaked into the walls. His face was a mask of bone and gold, split by veins of light that pulsed in rhythm with the throne's heartbeat. He was alive. He was part of the system. The custodian beside me bowed his head. He is the anchor. Each century, one of us joins the throne. We are its flesh now. We carry the burden so that he may rest. I felt my mouth go dry. How many? I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in a custodian's eyes. Too many. He gestured toward the altar. Do you know why we never leave Terra? Why we do not fight in the Emperor's wars? I shook my head. He continued, voice low, almost human. Because every custodian who falls here becomes part of the prison. We are the locks, our bodies, our souls, our memories all bound into the machine. The throne feeds on psychers, yes, but it feeds on us as well. We are his bloodline now. We are the pulse that keeps the monster beneath from waking. The monster? I whispered. He hesitated, then placed a hand on the anchor's chest. The light beneath his palm flared, and the anchor screamed a sound that was not pain, but remembrance. It echoed through the hall, shaking dust from the ceiling, and beneath it, another sound stirred deep, guttural, older than the Emperor himself. It listens, he said. It always listens. He turned to me, and for a heartbeat, I saw the man behind the armor. Tired, hollow, devout. We are the Emperor's custodians, but he is no longer the one we guard. We guard what he has become. We guard the light that should have gone out long ago. I wanted to ask, what happens when the throne fails, when the machine breaks, when the last anchor dies? But he raised a finger to his lips once more. If the throne dies, the Emperor dies. If the Emperor dies, the light dies. If the light dies, something else will stand in its place. He paused. That is what we guard against. He turned away then, walking toward the altar. As he did, the other custodians opened their eyes, one by one. Their armor gleamed with faint light. Their mouths moved in silent prayer, and the anchor began to sing. It was not a song meant for ears. It was vibration, resonance, a frequency that clawed at thought itself. My vision blurred. My body trembled. I could feel the words forming inside my skull. The throne must never fail. The throne must never fail. The throne must never fail. over and over, until the phrase ceased to be words and became pulse, a heartbeat made of obedience. When I woke, I was lying in a purification cell. My ears bled. My skin bore the imprint of the custodian's hand, 5 scorched marks that glowed faintly with light. A priest of the Mechanicus told me I had suffered harmonic exposure. He ordered me to forget everything I had seen. He said forgetting was mercy. But I cannot forget, because since that day, I have heard it too, the whisper beneath the hum, the rhythm beneath the silence. And now I know the truth. The custodians do not guard the emperor. They guard the interval between his dying breath and the next. They stand watch over a god who is becoming something else, something that must never wake, something that has already begun to dream. The emperor protects, they chant. But what if protection is only the name we give to containment? And what if the thing contained is no longer a god, but a consequence? They will tell you the emperor endures unchanged, a diamond of will unrotted by time, a perfect axis upon which the rusted cosmos turns. They will tell you the Astronomicon is his breath, and the throne his chair, and that 1,000 psychers die each day to polish eternity. They will tell you there is no becoming left in a god. They lie because they must, because truth would split the palace from foundation to spire. I have walked too far below the surface to be fooled by gold. I have seen the arteries, they call them conduits, and the ribs, they call them supports, and the lungs, they call them bellows, that draw and expel the choir's last prayers, as if prayer were air. And I have felt the change, not as dogma, but as temperature, warmer each year, as though a winter-thin cocoon had learned to keep its own weather. The emperor is not preserved. He is in transition. The first proof is arithmetic. 10,000 years of offerings, souls lifted like coals into a furnace that never reaches ash. What is burned leaves soot. Soot clings. Souls, too, cling. Every clean sacrifice is a paradox. A life erased that somehow leaves more writing on the walls. The feeding halls are scrubbed. The whispers return. The conduits are purged. Residue grows back as hymn. The Mechanicus logs call it psychic accretion. The custodians call it weight. The choirs call it by no name at all, because once you name it, you can hear your own voice in the sediment. We say the emperor contains the warp. Containment is not absence, it is contact. The throne holds him at the shoreline, waves breaking forever across a body that remembers being land. Every breaker deposits something. Foam, salt, bone. After an age, the shore is not what it was. After an age, it is not shore at all. It is reef. What kind of reef has grown around him? The ecclesiarchy cannot decide whether the answer is comfort or blasphemy, so it recites both. In the upper cathedra, they preach the apotheosis. The emperor ascending by our faith, transfigured into a god that drinks our devotion and returns it as light. In the sealed vestries they whisper the mutilation, a man stretched beyond man by a machine that learned to sing, swollen with borrowed voices until his is one among many. They settle the argument with volume. Volume is the coward's truth. The Mechanicus does not argue. It measures. I copied their graphs when my hands still belonged to me. Centuries mapped as waveforms, the Astronomicon's spectrum widening like a mouth. New harmonics appear, persist, and do not leave. Some carry recognizable structure, old battle prayers, catechisms, Mars cant. Others are raw weather, grief without language, awe without object, terror shaped like a cradle. They overlay these on star charts and call the result guidance. They are not wrong. They omit the obvious addendum. Guidance by what? You will say, by him. I will say, by him plus, a summation that has crossed into other arithmetic. A choir becomes a chord becomes a substance becomes an appetite. Appetite simplifies gods. If we were pure enough, we might call that love. We are not. We must call it by the name that keeps our hands steady. Function. Function grows legs. Function learns to walk. I remember the first time the palace shook in a way that was not failure. It was not the stuttering of exhausted amplifiers, nor the shiver of a warped bearing. It was a single, decisive correction, like a sleeping giant rolling to ease a limb trapped beneath its own weight. The choirs fainted, the navigators bled, the custodians did not blink. When the tremor ended, the beacon's line through the imatrium was cleaner than any scribe had ever charted it. A straight road requires a straight maker. Afterward, the Ordo convened a colloquy to decide whether the anomaly should be classified as miracle or malfunction. I filed their minutes. The transcript reads like two mirrors arguing about which one contains the other. They sealed the record with the sigil DE Hoc Tertia about this. Silence. Silence is a lid. It is also a womb. Each year since, the corrections recur barely a breath, no longer than a blink, and always followed by an increase in throughput. More offerings, brighter light, fewer deviations. The machine is improved by its patient, or the patient has learned the machine's grammar and begun to write. What is he writing? There is a word the oldest astropaths try not to use: coalescence. It names the quiet physics of fog finding itself, of star stuff, discovering that heat can be a spine, of millions forgetting they were separate and remembering they were one. A man can coalesce, too, though not in the body. We call that heresy when it happens by accident, and divinity when it is accomplished on purpose. The Emperor was once the only mind on Terra capable of holding mankind's outline in a single thought. 10,000 years of choir-fed resonance has given him a second outline drawn, not by him, but on him traced by the stylus of our collective fear and need. One figure seated upon the throne, another seated through him. You have seen a refraction in a chalice of wine, how the candle behind it doubles and stretches into a false wick. If you drink too quickly, you swallow flame. The palace has been drinking steadily for an age. We have swallowed the second wick. It burns behind the first. Call it the Star Child if you must. Some do, thinking they have chosen hope. Call it the refraction if you prefer geometry to prayer. The name changes nothing. Something has assembled itself from the detritus of sacrifice and the scaffolding of a will that once bound primarchs like arrows in a fist. It has no infancy. It remembers only crescendo. It has never known a body smaller than a civilization. It has never known quiet. What does such a thing want? Here language fails, and music inherits. I will try crude notes. It does not want conquest. The galaxy already curls toward terror like iron filings toward a hidden magnet. It does not want worship. Worship is the weather it breathes. It does not want to end suffering. Suffering is its solvent and its glue. What it wants, if wanting is the right word, is resolution. Dissonance, brought to heel. Wandering lines pulled into one staff. Every ship and soul beating time with the same invisible hand. A conductor does not hate the orchestra's pain. He turns it into tempo. The cruelest truth. Tempo feels like meaning when your life has known only noise. Once I would have called such resolution salvation. Now I know the tax. Harmony is expensive. It asks you to become a note and forget you were a throat. The custodians understand this in their marrow. It is why they refuse the title wardens of heaven and live instead as locksmiths. They stand between two completions. The completion named death, the throne fails, the light dies, the galaxy drowns, and the completion named birth, the throne succeeds too well, the light blooms. The new thing steps forward wearing the memory of a man. They fear the second more than the first, though they would be punished for saying so. Death is an equation with a finite number of zeros. Birth is a series with no end. I asked the anchor whose song peeled the enamel from my teeth if he, the he of 10,000 banners, still chooses. The anchor's mouth moved. The throne answered through him in a pulse that fluttered the lumen. Strips. Choice, it suggested, is a function of boundary. A horizon gives a sailor a direction. How much of the Emperor's horizon remains when the warp sea breaks eternally upon his skin? How many choices does a lighthouse make after we feed it 1,000 candles a day? At what candle do we admit the lighthouse is now a sun, and that suns do not decide to shine? They are shining. There are nights when the beacon's pressure climbs high enough to pluck thought like a string. On such nights, I hear a whisper braided through the no that has kept our species afloat. It is gentle, almost apologetic, with the gravity of a hand lowering onto a restless child's shoulder. Be still. It does not sound like him. It sounds like what him has become under the accumulative weight of us. It sounds like a million mothers and a million executioners asking for the same gift. Quiet. The gift costs the same, no matter who begs. Quiet is the end of a question. A species that stops asking is complete. Completed things do not change. Completed things do not suffer. Completed things do not live. There is an alternative theology. exiled to the whispering corners where remembrances die of natural causes. It argues that the emperor never desired worship nor eternity. He desired sufficiency, just enough light to lift mankind past the teeth of gods. The throne was a bridge, not a throne. Bridges are meant to be crossed and dismantled. We, coward children, turned scaffolding into shrine and called it parental love. 10 millennia of offerings have taught the bridge to believe it is a palace. Palaces learn to want residents. Residents learn to lock doors. If this heresy is true, the only faithful act left is treason. To let the bridge fall once its far shore is reached. But what shore? Name me a star where men do not scream. Name me a century that would not throw itself into the fire to buy another. The shore recedes because we keep moving the lamp. So the palace chooses the nearer mercy. Maintenance, the indefinite prolongation of a becoming that must never finish, guarded by men who must never admit what they guard. The custodian's motto is not written on any banner, but you can hear it in the tick between the throne's inhalation and exhalation. Hold the interval, hold it against entropy, hold it against birth. Hold it until the arithmetic breaks, or the count ends, or the man within remembers a word none of us have taught him in an age. Enough. Will he remember it? I do not know. Memory is a communal act now, and we have given him only verbs of more, burn more, shine more, guide more, take more, hold more. The only noun we permit is mankind, and even that is dissolving into the tense of weather. We say the Imperium, the way desert tribes say the wind. I write these lines with a hand that shakes because the palace hum is higher tonight, a thin sweetness over iron, like a hymn starting in a child's throat. Choirmasters call it favorable. Navigators call it clear-seeing. Custodians call it nothing. I call it practice. Something beneath us is rehearsing the voice with which it will one day answer when the prayers no longer come and the candles gutter and the black ships return empty. What will it say? Perhaps, be still. Perhaps, again. Perhaps, if a mercy remains in the shape of the thing that once walked among us, go. If there is a chance for that last word, it lies not in louder worship, but in a sentence the ecclesiarchy forgot to canonize. A god may choose to end his own ritual. I cannot counsel rebellion. I have knelt too long to stand straight. I can counsel witness. Keep your eyes on the interval. Count the beats. When the metronome wavers, do not clap. Listen. If you hear a human word inside the chord, teach it back to him with the only offering that is not fuel, silence. Because if we cannot give him silence, he will take it. And the day he takes it, the Astronomicon will not blaze. It will resolve a pure tone without tremor, the last line on the last chart. Every ship will find its harbor at once. Every prayer will be answered the same way. Every question will fall asleep. The galaxy will be in tune, and I, who have loved light since I learned to read it, will say what no priest dares. May that day be delayed. May the bridge remember it was a bridge. May a god remember how to stop. Until then, the palace breathes, the choirs burn, the custodians bleed where no one can see, and I write this with ink that will not dry because the walls sweat with someone else's dream. The emperor protects, they chant. Perhaps he does. Perhaps the thing becoming him will try to. Perhaps protection, at the end of all arithmetic, is the simplest prison that love knows how to build. It will not happen in a roar. The end of light will come like sleep, a slow unraveling mistaken for peace. The black ships will still arrive. The priests will still chant. The psychers will still burn. The throne will still hum, until, one day, the hum will answer itself. I have watched the readings for years. Each day, the power drawn from the choirs climbs higher. Each day, the response from the Astronomicon delays by a fraction of a breath, a fraction so small that only machines hear it, and the machines have learned to lie. They adjust, they compensate, they correct the rhythm, so the priests never notice that the song no longer matches the heartbeat. They call this stability. I call it imitation. The throne has begun to sustain its own pulse. It no longer waits for the sacrifices to scream before the light flares. It breathes before the offering now, as though anticipating the meal, like a creature dreaming of the taste before it wakes. The Mechanicus calls it a positive harmonic echo. The custodians say nothing. The choirs grow thinner each month, and still the light burns brighter. The day it happens will look ordinary. The bells of the ecclesiarchy will ring, the choirs will gather, the ships will bow their vox to the emperor's radiance, and then the hum will shift by a single tone, higher, purer, cleaner than it has ever been. Every astropath will fall silent. Every navigator will open their third eye and see a sky without storm. They will believe it is a miracle. It will not be a miracle. It will be completion. The Astronomicon will shine like a second sun, swallowing the void in gold. The warp will recoil, its tides flattening into glass. For one perfect moment, every ship of the Imperium will see terror, no matter where it sails. Every captain will weep, every choir will kneel, every mouth will whisper, "He has awoken." And in the heart of the palace, the throne will stop. I have seen it in dream, or memory, or prophecy. I no longer know the difference. The custodians will drop their blades. The anchors will scream one last note, and their armor will split like eggshells. The psychers in the feeding halls will burn without touch, their ashes rising like incense through the broken air. The golden light will turn white, too pure for shadow, too sharp for sight. And then there will be silence, a silence vast enough to hear thought itself end. They will say the emperor has returned. They will call it salvation. They will not see what stands in his place, because it will not be a man. It will not even be a god. It will be a concept given anatomy, a thing shaped from the compression of 1,000,000 years of faith and fear, lit from within by the residue of 1,000 dying minds. It will look like light learning to walk. Some will see his face. Others will see their own, reflected back endlessly. The wise will see nothing, and in that nothing, understand everything too late. The warp will split. The daemons will kneel not out of worship, but recognition. Because this new thing will not fight them, it will complete them. The chaos gods are emotions given infinity: hunger, change, rot, pleasure. What is left to create but the emotion that all other emotions orbit? Purpose. That is what he will become. The purpose that justifies every cruelty, every sacrifice, every silence. The logic behind the pain. And we will love him for it. Because what else is left to love? I believe the custodians know. I believe they have always known. That is why they never pray, why they never call his name. They are not guardians of a god. They are jailers of a becoming. And they fear the day the prison learns it no longer needs locks. The oldest of them call that day the second dawn. They do not speak of it except in the silence between heartbeats. The silence I have learned to hear. It is close now. You can feel it in the ground, the way the palace hums differently. A softer rhythm, almost tender, like a hand that has stopped trembling. When the throne fails, it will not be death. It will be the end of separation. No more souls, no more matter, no more choice. Everything folded into one breath, the breath he has been holding for 10,000 years. The exhale of creation remembering itself. Perhaps it will be mercy. Perhaps it will be the only peace this universe deserves. Perhaps we will finally stop screaming, or perhaps the scream will simply change key. I do not know if I write these words to warn or to witness. I only know that when the light turns white, I will not run. I will walk to the edge of the palace and look into the heart of it. And if there is still a voice within that remembers being human, I will whisper the only word left worth saying. Enough. Maybe he will hear it. Maybe he will understand that a god who cannot rest is no god at all. Maybe, for one fraction of a second, he will choose silence over endurance. And in that silence, the galaxy will breathe again, not in worship, not in terror, but in relief. And if not, then let the light come. The emperor protects, they say. Perhaps he always has. But protection is a circle, and circles close. When the throne fails, protection will end, and something else, something vast and kind and terrible will take its place. And the stars will burn with purpose.